All right. Welcome to our live board meeting. We have one thing on the agenda that I've added, and then whatever else comes up. Otherwise, we can talk about literally anything, our projects, anything else. I got a notice from the whoever I've registered TogetherTec.org under that it's expiring in like 60 days, and that was about a week or so ago. So it's not like I have to decide right now. It's not doing anything, but also I don't kind of want to let it go. Anyway, yeah. Should I renew it? What is the?
It's like $15 or something around there.
I don't know. I actually don't know how much it is to renew it. I should find that out. I was thinking it was like $100. I was like, but maybe it's not.
A .org should be around $15 a year. Depends on how many years you want to do it. I just do 1 year at a time because I'm so fickle.
Yeah.
So I guess this is why I'm talking to you
I don't think
guys.
I've ever actually let a domain expire. I've got a bunch that I'm not using.
I had to save my marriage.
Oh, really?
How many did you have, Bentley?
Hi, my name is Bentley. I'm a domain addict. I had about 40. I'm down to 15 now.
Okay.
I'm
I
doing
think
much
probably
better.
around 15.
I haven't bought one in 6 months.
Okay.
Let's start an MLM.
Do you have your chip?
I've searched. It's kind of like driving past the bar.
I love it. What was I going to say about the? So maybe because it has to be, what's the word, like hosted as well. Maybe I don't need to host it, but just need the domain. And so because I don't know how to do one and not the other, my brain's like, it's $100. But yeah, I can definitely afford 20 to keep it active for another year because that's fine.
Yeah, you just have to park it and make sure you shut down the hosting fees so they'll get caught in that.
Okay, so I might need someone's help to do that,
Yeah.
but okay.
Just reach out.
Yeah, all right. Right, so yeah, aside from that.
Was that the topic you had on the list, or was
That was it, yeah.
Okay.
I was like, all right, other than that, it's like we're all on our own projects. There's this cool thing that Jared introduced me to, but it's like let me see if I can find it. It's like $10 a month to just be basically a sponsoring member, and they're not a tech, it's more of like the non-tech part of what I was thinking of doing, kind of like solution raising, and you get together once a week and you're discussing world-saving ideas. But yeah, it's like $30 to be part of it per month. And I'm like, I'm a poor person. And it's that, like, if you have to charge $30 a month to have a voice in it, then you're not getting the voice of people who, like, have disabilities and who are poor. And it's not like I don't also have good ideas. I'm not showing up asking for like all the energy we put on me. But anyway, he's looking into getting me another a subscription through it. But that was just my instant. It looks like an amazing organization. And
do you remember the name of that? I think I saw it.
I'm going to. I'm going to figure it out. 1 second.
That's fine.
It's on.
I know I'd seen it, but I can't remember it now either.
It's in my. And I want like them to have all the success, but I also, it's like the thing I was talking about before we went live with the MLMs is because 3 people right now in my life, one who's involved in, like, I want a way for people to make a living that isn't an MLM and isn't like being in poverty and isn't having to constantly ask for donations for your amazing village in Kenya. Like, I just, where'd it go? That's them. Well, that's me. Membership to Civ Type 1. Let me just Google that and then it will come up.
Sounds like a disorder. Civ type 1.
Well, it's their charter. World Future Society. And I will. And this is the plans. I am going to put it on my. I can find it. All right. In which collaboration happens. If it was stating that, but yeah, it will. It will indeed. There you go. Worldfuture.org.
Cool.
And so it looks like their weekly meeting is, I believe, on Tuesday. So it's like the one of the days I don't have anything. So I'm like, I could participate. And that's the other thing is like, there's so many amazing things, but they all cost like it's like my same problem with the tech, right? Where it's like, well, amazing tech exists, but it's all at least $10 a month per person per group. So it's like astronomical for a not-for-profit. And it looks like our amazing meta save the world space is having the same thing happen. It's like, right, it's $10 to join Rebel Wisdom and $10 to join Future Thinkers, and like $30 to join these people. And it's like, okay, is there a way to bring us together and then have one fee? Like I would pay $30 a month, even with my poorness, for access to all of those things, and to be part of that is like a bigger community where I could, see the events and choose which ones I was part of.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out. I guess I'm supporting a whole bunch of creators on Patreon. Probably spending $100 a month on Patreon right now, and then a couple other things. And actually, most of the time I don't they normally give you a little stuff, but mostly it's just to support them. And sometimes the behind-the-scenes stuff is neat, but honestly, I don't have time to look at it right now.
I'm the same way. I support a bunch of people on Patreon. I don't think I've looked at any of the Patreon content for like 6 months.
Which is
also
really,
sorry, go Bentley.
I was saying that's really kind of the right way to do it. Anyway, I mean, I hope they're not doing too much work on that extra stuff, but the main thing is to support their main thing and make it free for the rest of the world for those that do that sort of thing. Some have, and then the closed stuff is supposed to be just bonus, so I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the same way. The people that I support just because I want to support them, and I'm not necessarily doing it for the content, but it doesn't hurt if I want to.
That I think is like, there's people on YouTube that I watch that if I had money, I would absolutely support their Patreon because they're amazing humans, but they also have like nearly 1 million subscribers. Like they don't need my $5 really. They're getting money from YouTube. Whereas these 3 people in my life that like, they have come up this last week, the person who is involved in very Game Beast stuff has a Patreon, has a community supporting her, but she doesn't, right? They're not giving her money on Patreon. They're not giving her $5 a month because she's not produced. Like, it's like, if you don't produce the content, it's like, is the content really the highest purpose, right? It's like a YouTube episode really creating Game B. It's powerful, it's helpful, but it's not the actual people coding and the people creating this stuff and the people who are doing the admin work. And this woman, the fact she had to join an MLM because that's her idea of like a future, her best opportunity for money when you have to scam thousands of people to possibly make money, which is not how you look at it. You're like, I'm helping them. No, that's not how it works. Someone's getting screwed over here. There aren't enough people on the planet for us to have this system. And like, one of the things that I would love to see is almost like a voting system for people, like even if I can't support her, to be able to say, right, but could everyone else please? Like, if I won the lottery, here are the people I would support. Like, here are the people I would give a salary to. And this guy in Kenya who has the J10 village, and he needs $500 a month to support like 50 people. Their permaculture, they got it going on. Like it's, and I was like, well, how much would you need in order to not have to constantly be looking for money because their like pond is evaporating. And they have to bring in water because they don't have running water. I was like, oh yeah, right. Other places in the world don't have the same problems I do. And so like this beautiful place, I got a tour of it. And I'm like, how do you not have $500 a month? Like, how is some influencer not like with you so that they can tweet you out to their people? Like, I just don't, and I don't have enough connections to get them that person. I put it up on my Facebook, and I put it up in the girl gang, which is tech people, female tech people in Vancouver, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird. Like with something like that, and I have the same problem with WikiLection. I imagine Reason Score has something similar, where like you could theoretically get some funding if you were to sort of make content about it, but that's not the point. The point isn't the content, and it's kind of also a distraction.
Yeah, it's definitely a distraction. Now, I think so Patreon made a change to where they can do monthly subscriptions instead of per item. CPG Gray, who creates videos, or CPG Gray, he has slowed down his production, but his quality of his videos have gone up.
Right.
And he said that was very helpful. So I think like Patreon and other funding things that are not content-based can be helpful, because even if you just, so something like that could be. Of course, the great thing about Patreon as opposed to some of the other solutions is that I can pay 20 people just like $1 a month. The credit card fees are a lot smaller overall because I'm able to bulk pay.
Right.
So it's it's close to a micropayment. It's not quite a micropayment. You think of micropayments being like pennies. But it's better than having to pay $2 and $1 of it go to the credit card company.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think that would be a great model, because I don't know, at $1 per person. So yeah, is that the 10,000 fans model?
No, but that would be like a medium type thing, right? Again, though, medium's like the odd person. Like Jordan Hall's gonna have no problem getting people to like his content. He'll get money, even though he probably doesn't need it for his stuff. But people like Ernesto, who like did that. I don't know. I'm not good enough at physics to know if what he proposed works. But I'm like, this is what people should be looking at and be able to critique. And there isn't a way to upvote that in a way that it gets to more people besides just sharing it, right? Which is, I guess, like having a community of people who are literally just like social media marketing experts to be able to be like, right, put this out to your community, right? And we vote the one that we want to go viral and having it go out to those people, and a campaign a month. Like my whole thing is just, if I won the lottery, here's who I'd support, right? Like I'd support both of your projects. I would support James Jones's Cube Spawn. I would make sure Carrie had a living wage. I would make sure this person in the MLM had her stuff going on, and I would fund this village in Kenya. Like it's like, and that it sounds like I wouldn't, like that's not that much money. Like you guys are probably the most expensive. No, James is the most expensive out of those ones because his living wage is very low, but his project is very expensive, right? Whereas, your guys, like it's just my current frustration. So let's start our own MLM, which is what, because I have this like thing on my whiteboard right now, which is the distribution for doTERRA, and like they're like, all you need is 7 people, and this 7th layer gets 7%. I'm like, so the people at the bottom, like it just doesn't make any sense. But it's a horrible way for anyone to make money if you're not scamming people. But it's a great way to get connections. Like it's a great way to bring in people.
There's a reason why companies do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that many people involved to get, I've been, sort of like, I've definitely been offered MLMs many, many times. And I think I've like maybe bought something like the actual product maybe once or twice.
Our family has had a few. Just our immediate family has had at least a dozen MLMs in our history.
Yep.
But it's like the math is enticing for that reason. But then you think like, right, this doesn't work. Like you don't, but it does work to recruit. And there's something about what it does offer people. There's a lot of fake positivity that comes into it. Like, oh, you're just not trying enough. Like these people got to be millionaires. What's wrong with you? But there's you have coaches and you bring together in this weird anti-competition, uber competition way. It's like, we're not each other's competition. Yes, you are. That's why franchises don't let you open up a McDonald's right across the street from each other. And yet you're like recruiting people in. And anyway, that there's something here that is, if we can bring the people together, like that's where I'm working on the anti-MLM, where I'm like, yeah, go recruit for 3 friends, and they recruit 3 friends, and they recruit, and we all level up together. It's like when we get to 10,000 people, we can retire all of us in 5 to 10 years, not the tippy top of the pyramid. Like all of us can retire, not millionaires, not yachts, but like a house, food, community, and education. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, that all brings to mind a topic that I kind of want to bring up anyway, so let me know if I'm stepping on anyone. So I've been dealing with horrific customer service this week. Not with the vacation actually, but during while I was traveling, I was also dealing with these companies for like medications from pharmacies and termite and pest stuff at the house, and the websites are horrific. Their customer service people don't care, and it's obvious. And their processes, it's like, how do you send out this email to 1,000 people with horrific typos in it? And how does it happen again a couple months later? It's like, how 1,000, you're giving these 1,000 people little pinpricks all the time, and no one's screaming, no one's fixing the problems and stuff like that. And then I was thinking, well, I just want to start a company that does all this stuff, mostly not for profit. It just pays its employees dang well, right? A really nice living. Everyone, the employees are happy and they really want to service the customers. But then I thought, well, that's a lot of actual work, and I don't do work. So, um, but then I thought, oh, well, if I could easily find another company for this pest service around my house, um, I would jump on it. But it's such a pain in the neck to go and find them. And you would think there's something like, I don't know how international they are, but we have like Angie's List, which traditionally was started looking for individual workers that would come to your house and stuff like that. But I think they also cover organizations like that. And then there's Consumer Reports, like we talked about, and stuff like that. But still, something just doesn't feel like it's the right, like it really solves the problem. And maybe because it's still Game A, and it still feels like there's some shenanigans in there. I don't know if it's just trust. I don't know why. I just feel like it doesn't quite do it. So that brings us back to the idea that we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks, is having, a um, crowdsourced company organization kind of ranking system. So I'm back inspired in that. Although, honestly, to tell you the truth, I had a startup reach out to me to help them do some coding, and that they'll pay me for. So that's Game A. And then I have another project that that I want to invest in. And then I'm actually hiring someone to work on Reason Score to do some data analysis, and I'm collaborating with Society Library, we're going to do misinformation on election interference, election integrity. So we're sharing a worker on that. So
Nice.
yeah, so I have too many things I want to do, and I'm not going to do them all. So now I'm in that. It was nice when I just had Reason Score. It's like, no, I'm going to work on Reason Score. But now Reason Score is kind of slowed down a bit, and my passion has waned a little bit. So I'm trying other things, and I'm also thinking about how I got to start making money at some point. So I'm trying to balance all that stuff. But I'd really love to make that platform. I just don't know if I have time.
Yeah, that's the fairly near future for what I want Conferati to be, where it's going to end up being a list of organizations at a bunch of levels, like organizations that took PPP loans, but then also some way to sort of track information at the small level. And I mean, I think that part's probably down the road, but like the infrastructure's there. So if there's a certain feature that would be useful there, we could probably tack that on fairly easily.
So maybe it would be good. I don't know if you'd want to head this up, Adriel. Is just try and schedule kind of a weekly meeting with the interested people, you, me, and there's like 3 or 4 other people. I guess I'd have to go look to see who they were.
Like Mark, you mean like Mark's what Mark was trying to do?
Yeah, definitely, Mark, because
there's 2 things that came up for me for
most recently.
For customer service, and from like people who I do want to be successful in life, and yet their business practices, like one of whom I happen to know their life history, and they never lived on a farm, and they're like, I grew up on a farm really close to the land. I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't at all. And another one who has this light, like selfie light thing that I think their husband, I don't even know if it's drop shipped or whether they actually created it, but they're giving them away, or they're getting you to buy it. They'll refund you the money as long as you give them a 5-star review. And it's like, yeah, I get it. That's what you kind of have to do to get but it's like, it would be so much different if it was like, try it out, give us an honest review and we'll pay for it. And of course you're going to give them a 5-star review, right? It's your friend's thing. But it's like just even asking for the 5-star review. And then it's like, then 5-star reviews don't mean anything. And it's just, we all know that. So what's the point? Like, we need a system a Yelp and an Amazon that we can trust. That is like, right, I want to know how long it lasts and how it was made. And
a different grading system, because I think all the 5-star stuff, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's the same thing on Upwork, where it's like giving somebody a 4-star is bad.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, if you're not a 5-star, then the amount of work that you get is way less. And you're like, but a 4-star should still be good. It just means you aren't like world class. Yeah, they're good, but like it almost should be in context of a bunch of things. Like, okay, how are they for the price rate, for this, for that, for that? Are they 5-star, taking all that into account? Great. Oh, are they not 5-star compared to the person that you're paying 10 times more? Imagine that.
Yeah, there's some, and that's especially, I don't know if that's Northern American or, but I heard in Europe and a lot of places, like if you're in an Uber and your average score goes down to 4, they like drop you off the system.
Yeah,
But if
I
it's
think
in other
that's
countries, they don't because they rate people properly, where a 3 is average,
right.
and then better and better. Now there are some techniques to get around that, which I wonder if we could apply to the space. Like in project management, you say, okay, it's 6 months in the future, the project failed. Why did it fail? And then people feel free to like kind of pull out those things that they normally wouldn't have. Um, so figure that's an interesting thing to figure out the questions, because just a number scale, different cultures will do that differently.
Yeah. I almost
So it'd
feel
be
like
interesting also to just have words and no number.
I think
So you
it's,
can say
if you could kind of have like
average.
tags,
Yeah.
like, okay, like for a restaurant. Well, the star thing really doesn't make sense there. 'Cause you're like, well, okay, but did you not like the service? Did you not like the food? Did you not like the pricing? Do you not like the location? Like,
Right.
why are you rating it low? Because if I
And
don't
yeah,
care about the
right.
location or the service, I just care about the food, and you're saying the food is great, but the service was terrible, 1 star. And I think like Yelp has tried it, but they still aggregate it up to the total score. And you're like, if I don't care about the location, I shouldn't
Right.
probably be scoring it.
And a per instance, right? Like there's restaurants I love and I use constantly, and there's that one off where you're like, you gave me too spicy of food or too, and it's like, yeah, I don't want to
Hmm.
screw over their rating system, but also it's good to have that metric. Well, 1 out of 10 times you order their mild, it's going to come spicy, right? Or like that kind of information that doesn't screw over the business, but
Yeah,
helps them.
I really like that, because there are companies out there who have a horrible consistency, and you don't know if when you go there if it's bad, if it's like, well, was it just that one time, or is it gonna happen like every third time I'm there? So it'd be nice to have that, but not rate them low. And then Adriel, like you said, some people love loud restaurants because it makes them feel alive and energy.
Right.
I hate it. So yeah, so like I guess that falls back into our thing where we were just talking about, like also voting for politicians. It's not a star whether they're good or bad. It's like, do they value the same things I value? So same
Totally.
thing in
Yeah,
restaurants.
exactly.
Yeah.
It, in a lot of cases, it's not going to be good or bad. It's just what areas are they, they tend to be leaning more this way. They're good here, but they're bad there. Like, yeah, to see kind of what they prioritize. And I think also, like, I use skip the dishes here a fair bit, which is kind of like one version of our like Uber Eats and stuff like that. And that's an area where, again, the feedback system is crap. Is like they ask you for feedback as soon as the delivery is completed. They're like, how was the food and how was the person? I don't know how the food is. I'm holding it. And then they also don't ask for feedback on the platform. And I'm like, I almost never had a problem with the delivery person. But one of the gripes is like, well, okay, but you said they were 5 minutes away, and I can look on the map and they're 5 blocks away. And then my phone rings and they say that they're downstairs. Well, that's not their fault. That's your platform's fault. But you don't give me the option to rate your platform.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I hate that. It's like, how was the customer service agent? Like, don't ask me about the agent. Your stupid website was so bad I had to talk to your customer service. So why can't I give you feedback on that? Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that's horrible.
yeah. And I think
Uh,
also, I almost never actually rate the restaurant, partially because I'm like, usually it's too late, but then it's also, there isn't really a reason for me to. And I think then you get into the issue where people only really rate if it's bad,
yeah.
which then ends up being like, if you're doing a high volume, you might end up with a bad score because I, did 1,000 meals, only 20 of them actually rated it, and 10 of those were bad. And then 10 of them were
Yeah.
good, but the other 990, well, what about them? I
Yeah.
assume
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, volume needs to be taken
yeah,
into
and also like
consideration as well.
it inferred things like, well, okay, this person didn't rate, but they've ordered from them 13 times. They probably like the food.
Yeah. And that's interesting because and just like that item that Jubilee just put up on the screen. Yeah, there you're gonna have bad. You are going to have some people that are always complaining. Actually, I'm a professional complainer. My poor wife has to put up with that. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if we can do anything to help that. I think even with those flaws, it would still kind of be a good system. But yeah, it's something to incentivize people. Maybe you can only post 3 bad reviews in a row, and then you have to find someone to say something nice about or something.
Yeah.
Or
You can post
give people
as many as you
points.
want, but then it divides it up. You're like, oh, this was this person's 1 bad review in 3 months. It's a heavy
Right.
one. Or this
Right.
was this person's 780th in the last week.
Right.
Maybe
What's
don't give it that big of a weight.
what's that called? Logarithmic reviews.
Right. Yeah.
Is it
So
what's the term? It's not log. What's the voting thing where you can
proportional.
where you can
Or
vote like 5 times, but the 5th vote is a lot. It's logarithmically worse, but they don't call it logarithmic voting. It's something exponential. I can't think of it.
that.
Anyways, but yeah, that's good. An algorithm like that.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm one of those
kind
people.
feel,
I only give the bad reviews. Like I think about the good ones, but I only give the bad ones. Like, and it's when it's exceptionally bad customer service. Like it takes a lot for me to fill out paperwork, so it's going really bad for me to
Exactly.
like my customer service with Costco with my last laptop, and I filled out the form. I have yet to send it in. It's been over a year since, but I'm like, do you understand how horrific? Like, I'm like, you guys have the best customer service, except for your freaking computer warranty, which is like, and they don't get feedback and they don't get to improve it. And I know they care about those things, but not that they're like a not-for-profit. No, they care about profit, and they care about people knowing that's one of the reasons people shop at Costco is because of their customer service. But
yeah. I mean, I feel like a good platform would sort of have a bunch of these, and then you'll end up like the first while it'll be confusing, and you'll probably, you wouldn't have a bunch of people using it, but you'll end up with sort of some unique scoring methods. Like, I would say personally, don't even have the 5-star at all, but just try out, 5 or 10 other systems like okay, you're a repeat customer and you've never said anything. We're going to take that as a plus. Like, we're going to say that's probably good because why are you going there if it's bad? Stop going there then.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, for our platform, we wouldn't know if they go unless they tell us, but.
Yeah, exactly. It would need to be something like Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats, where you're ordering through the platform, and then you're like, hey, you ordered through us 10 times. We're going to go ahead and put you down as, yeah, I like the place.
Yeah.
also
And then
wonder if there's a way to grade it on a curve, but like my personal curve, right? So it's like, if I could get Indian from anywhere in the city, where would I go for it? Or I go to this place because it's local, and there's a trade-off, right? I have about 3 or 4 local Indian restaurants right here, but I go to one specifically because I like it. But maybe I would go to a different one if I could get it anywhere from the city, right? So I would grade the Indian ones based on my preference, on their butter chicken, on their fried, because one does amazing butter sauce, horrible fried food. Do not get pakora there. Do not get samosas there, but amazing butter sauce best in the city. And it's like being able to showcase those things on a breakdown. They get that feedback to say, oh, that's why people aren't ordering our fried food. Maybe we shouldn't try to sell it the next. I don't know why it's bad. I have no idea what they're doing. But
but at least they know. Yeah, and I think that's also that's something that I would like in something like Uber Eats and all those is like almost a per dish thing where like people tend to order this. Oh, and here's the ones that people will reorder and things that people rate highly. But then also here's the dishes that tend to get the most complaints. So even if the place is highly rated, maybe don't do these 3 or 5 dishes.
Yeah, and I was just thinking it'd be nice if you could kind of adjust the data, like query the data however you want to see it, and maybe not a lot of people would use that. But it'd be easy enough to say, I care about ambiance, but not about location because I'm willing to drive, and then the scores would adjust. But also get into more detail. But we have to be careful to make sure that no one can use that data to identify people and know that Jubilee gets Thai every Wednesday, and then I can stalk her at the Thai restaurant, right?
Yeah, with all this,
probably Adriel gets more stalkers than Jubilee.
Yeah. And I think a part of it would be like taking into account the preferences of the people that do the scoring. Like if 2 people give the same, a very different score to a restaurant, but one person says, "Oh, okay, I only care about the flavor. That's it," and then somebody else says, "I care about the customer service and the location and this and that." Well, if the flavor person gives it a 5-star and the other person gives it a 1-star, it's not so much an average. It's okay, what do you like? Oh, you only care about flavor? Oh, okay, then we're going to weight these reviews a lot heavier for you. So for you, that's a 5-star restaurant. But for Bentley, it's a 1-star restaurant. Bentley, don't go there.
Right.
Yeah. I want to know actually more than people in my network, like whether you liked it or not.
Like people with similar
tastes.
Yeah, exactly.
Who like it or don't. And I think that is a good.
So it's kind of the way that Netflix does their movie reviews.
Right. Yeah. Where now it's like, because they used to have like the 5-star and like and now it's just the plus minus, and then they say other people that rated things similar to you did this, but in this case it's almost like a layer more complex because you're actually saying here's the kinds of movies I like.
Yeah, giving more data.
Exactly, and then if it was able to almost like hey, you said you value these 3 things, so when you're scoring a restaurant, we're going to ask you to rate these 3 things. If you don't care about the location, we're not going to ask you. But if you say, I do care about the location and the ambiance and the customer service, great. How are those things at this restaurant for you?
Mm-hmm.
To say, although yes, I don't want people to look up that I order Thai food every Tuesday. I do want it to know that. Like, I want it to tell me that and be like, did you know why not order in advance? This restaurant has a week in advance ordering so that they can better plan their menu and coordinate with neighbors, of course, of like, right, we're going to have one Uber Eats driver come out and therefore they're going to get paid, that Uber Eats driver can get paid the amalgamation of all that money minus 10% or 20%. They get more and you pay less, right?
Oh, that's interesting. Just coordinated buying in general. There's a couple websites that I think allow you to do bulk buying in groups so that you can get reduced costs. So yeah, that'd be an interesting feature.
Yeah, I would love that. Like if there was like an Uber Eats that was where you could like talk to restaurants in the area and say, hey, instead of doing this one-off where each person orders individually, if there are certain meals, like for example, butter chicken, where you can make it a big batch, hey, how much would you be able to make that for per serving if you were to make 100 servings at a time? Find the stuff that can be scaled like that, and then have it timed. We're like, hey, every Thursday, this Indian place will, if you order at least 2 days in advance, you can get butter chicken for $4.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take 10 orders, please.
Yeah, and also when I was thinking about funding, maybe selling the data back to the businesses of what people like and when. I mean, maybe they can kind of get a feel for it by using the site, but if they want to actually analyze the data, maybe that'd be a way to, I don't know, we have to think about what that incentivizes and stuff like that. But
I'd kind of like that because the other part that I would want a service like that to do is not gouge the restaurants. Because I know that with all of them, with Uber Eats, with Skip the Dishes, with all of them, they take a ridiculous piece of the pie. Yeah. And they pay the driver, really doesn't get much, and then the restaurants are barely scraping by. Like if you could actually turn that into an omni-win, what would that look like? And I think almost
you just did it. It's like that you get to order, you get to track your own data, you get to amalgamate, so you get a discount if you're ordering in advance and ordering their special meal that day. The restaurant gets the data. They know that this is the one that, like if there was a cooperatively owned, the driver's getting paid well, the restaurant isn't getting a fair cut. Who's going to shop at Uber Eats, right? Who's going to do that? And this is where like having the trust from the consumer base, where you can trust the reviews and that the money, you can transparently see the money's going to the driver and to the restaurant, because I want to support the local restaurant. Totally. That is, and even if they're able to transparently offer, listen, we had to up our prices, right? Like here's how much cream has gone up. Like, and then a dairy farmer could be like, actually, we can, like there's ways to coordinate that. It's absolutely omni-win. It's just getting it out there in a way that can then be marketed, or people like, who's going to use the other one? Like, really?
Yeah. Well,
who's going to drive for the other one? Who's going to use it?
Exactly. Well, and I think then you also have a reason, like, one of the things that I wanted is something like that, but also for like in-home services and stuff where they have to come to you, like housekeeping. You're like, okay, well, if a housekeeper has to charge $40 an hour, okay, but what if you charge $30 an hour as long as there was, 5 or 10 people in the same apartment building that you could do all at once? You're like, I'll show up on Thursdays, I'll do, up to 10 spots in your building, and instead of 40, it's 30. But then, you do it on a schedule, you drive to one building as a housekeeper, and that's your day. And you have 10 spots there, and now you're technically making more money because it's, you're almost like,
That's
it's a lot
right.
easier to get spots, and you aren't spending all your time traveling. And then also, it wouldn't be as like being super important that you spend the full hour there. If you're just saying, hey, pay me, $30 a week and I'll show up and do your place amongst all the others, then if you only spend 45 minutes, okay, well, that's fine. That's a part of how that service works.
The app idea about what to play on the TVs in the playlist. Of course, I
Silence, Bentley, for
Yeah,
you and I.
right. Yeah.
Silence.
There's no reason.
Although they don't usually have this volume.
Yeah, I mean, there's some restaurants where they have the TV on and you have this constant chatter, which I guess if you wanted to be in a place that had that feeling of excitement, then that would kind of just add to it. It wouldn't distract it, but I it's so annoying. In doctor's offices, I'm the only one there, and there's this TV playing some house renovation thing, and I'm like, oh, can I just please turn that off? They used to sell, and they probably still do, a remote that you'd hit and it'd just run through all the turn off commands for all the televisions, and so it just turn off all the televisions around you. Maybe I need to get one of those.
That too, I know you stated it, but having a way for people to offer when they're choosing a restaurant, why they're choosing it, right? Maybe spice wise, this one was too spicy, but this one isn't, or this ambiance of the physical place versus the food versus, is there a wheelchair accessible washroom? Is there a weird smell to the, like, literally anything, which is like, hey, the washroom's painted blue and it triggers me. No one else needs to give that a 1 star. That's not bad. It's just not something this person wants, right? And there's a lot of information that's like that like affects a very tiny group of people, but it's powerful.
And even that that part itself could end up being super useful if it were something like people with celiac. Oh, don't go to this restaurant. They don't take it seriously. Cool. 99% of people probably don't need to know that. For the few people that do, very good to know. And then you can build hey, here's restaurants that do take it seriously and that also care about, are highly rated in the stuff that you care about.
I had this one restaurant and I would get Sprite all the time, and it would run out of the, it mixes the carbonated water with the other thing, so they constantly bring just carbonated water to my table, and I'm like, every other time, because you can't tell by looking.
Yeah,
because it doesn't have the caramel.
There was someone giving a review on one of the anti-MLM ones that I was watching, and she was talking about a pizza place, and they went and they had vegan cheese, and she was like, hey, they have vegan cheese, but the crust wasn't vegan. She's like, why do you have this? Like, no one cares about vegan cheese besides vegans, and like that kind of thing. Because it's also just feedback for the restaurants. Be like, oh, right, eggs in the dough. We're not vegan. Oops. We can offer that. Or, oh, no, you're going to have to go somewhere else.
Yeah. That's funny. I guess while we're talking about weird side projects that might be useful, something that is kind of topical for the US right now, which might be an interesting project, is if there is a way to crowdfund a postal service. Because that feels especially topical and like,
yeah.
I mean, essentially that's kind of how it works now, where, combination of taxes and stuff, but also like, stamps. And if there was a way...
that postal, especially stamps and letters, none of them break even. It's the parcels and that kind of thing. Like there's kind of a reason they're federal, but at the same time, Amazon's kind of doing it. Now they're doing it not a Game B way, OmniWin at all. But like there's a way, I think there was an idea for like, I don't know if I've talked about it before, like a hub where if you are giving people, it doesn't matter if you're selling like a one-off, hey, just buy my bicycle because I want to sell it, or I'm selling bicycles in general or cookies, you have a pickup and a drop-off every day or every week. And so if there's a code, a QVC, not a QVC, but that kind of code where I can put it on, it knows it's going to Adriel, it picks it up from here and sends it to you. And there's a way where like locally it's, $5 a month, but maybe if I go outside of locally, then it's X dollars a month. And there's a way to drastically improve local businesses, right? Because not every local business has to figure out, how am I going to get my stuff shipped to the person? How am I going to pay for that? How am I going to, and if it was coordinated with us, right, the people, then it wouldn't, like Canada and the States would have one together, right? Like we wouldn't necessarily have the Canadian postal system and the American one. But I think there are ways to do that, but all of them require a threshold of usability, right? Like that'd be the kind of thing you'd want to have within a city to get goods from one person to another off of Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and all the farmer delivery places and stuff, and then develop it between the cities.
Yeah. I think it would be like, it would need to start exactly like you said, where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to start this in Vancouver, and then I'll offer that. Which honestly, I think there's even a need just for that, where like there's certain delivery services. Like Amazon is actually pretty good for their delivery service, but the other ones they use, like I actually prefer the Amazon one because they'll actually like call me and they'll actually try to make sure I get it. Whereas I'm pretty sure a lot of the other delivery companies like just walk up to the door with a Post-it note now and stick it on the door and walk away. Like I don't actually think that a lot of them even try to deliver it, which like that's kind of the point of Amazon, isn't it? To get it delivered to you so I don't have to drive somewhere. If I have to drive to
brown outfits. UPS? Is that UPS?
FedEx, I think.
No, FedEx is
UPS. Yeah, I think you're right. I get
and
it.
I don't know if it's this bad everywhere. I have no idea, but Vancouver's I'm always like, not UPS, because if they miss you, they need you to go out and pick it up, and there's like one location, or they charge you to go to like one of their other places to pick it up. What?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be delivered to my door. Like, why?
Yeah. So imagine if instead of that, if you just had like a service where they can have drop-off spots where you put that as your delivery address, and they say, yep, I'll accept a package for Jubilee. And then you have a relationship with them and possibly an app and stuff where they can deliver out of hours. And like it's sort of meant as an in-between, because like part of the issue is that my building, the intercom kind of sucks. And I think it's not always easy to use, and sometimes it just doesn't actually call you. And I think that certain delivery drivers have noticed that and just stopped trying. And then like with Amazon, they actually have your cell phone numbers. Like they'll actually call me and be like, hey, I have a package. And I think in that kind of case, if you just had that as the way to start it, we're like, okay, you pay us X amount per month or X amount per delivery, and then we'll, accept your packages for you and then make sure that you get it. And if we miss you and don't connect, then we'll try again tomorrow or try again next week or whatever that is.
I wonder what that, like, as a stay-at-home parent or someone, right? Like, if you're like, I'm home all the time, I can sign for packages. I sign for packages upstairs. It's not a problem, and I don't care if it was $1. Like, I care more about kind of helping my neighbor out than actually making that money. But it would also be a nice, like extra amount to be able to just add that on to things like Amazon, UPS, and stuff, where it's like an added-on app of like, hey, if you're not home for your deliveries and packages, here's the location in your neighborhood that's there. Right. Are you into that, right? Like, would you be okay? And as long as the person is a somewhat reputable, isn't going to steal them, isn't going to open them, it's like, right, know it's,
yeah. And even then,
the UPS said they got it, they signed for it, then you didn't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, like, just I guess the current time when the U.S. Postal Service is going through some issues, that seems like I wonder how well, and it might just be a big city thing, or if you actually got traction for it and offered it to everyone, it would be the kind of thing, kind of like how Greyhound was in Canada, where like, yeah, you can you can operate, and like the big city to big city, that's where you make your money. But in order to operate, you have to agree to also go to the small cities.
Yeah, it is that kind of last mile out to the rural that is one of the hardest problems to solve.
Yeah,
and it's actually probably the part. I mean, I never really looked at the U.S. Postal Service. I mean, for a long time it was self-solvent, and now they're talking about it losing money and stuff like that, and I don't know. I've not fact-checked that, because I've seen several people saying both ways. I mean, it's probably screwed over now that it's been targeted politically.
Yeah.
But
I've heard that it's kind of both true, because it is not profitable, but it's not profitable because there's a certain rule where like they have to have like 75 years of pensions in the bank or something like that, where it's the only thing in like the world that's like that.
Right.
And so it's it's kind of they're forced to be not profitable.
Yeah, I haven't.
The bus company has to have 75 years of pension.
The U.S. Postal Service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
but I'll just continue.
So I kind of feel that should be a public good.
Yeah, I mean, I would
but it'd be nice. I mean,
and the weird thing is that in a way, it kind of seems like all the sides should sort of like this if you got the company to the point where you could prove it was trusted to take that kind of thing out of the government's hands. You're like, yeah, we don't want the postal service to be politicized. Just people will pay into a fund directly. It manages it itself. If it's not profitable, cool. Hey, people, we're running a deficit. Here's our numbers. We either need to change our prices or change our services. What do you as the customers want to do?
I think I remember what I was gonna say about remote delivery. And that's part of the issue is that when you're federally owned, right, when you're a public good, you have to offer the same services to everyone. And so if I in Vancouver can have 24-hour delivery, they're expected to have 24 delivery in a place that you know what I mean, you have to like fly into. And so that therefore it costs a lot. Whereas if you're somewhat choosing to live remotely, right? I know I'm going to be choosing to live more remotely, whether how remotely Nelson or those kind of places are, but finding like if you're like you can put in to Amazon, right? Whatever our equivalent of Amazon is, the tiny village, the tiny place is like, right, we're getting delivery once a month. So don't order milk until, you know what I mean? But it saves it in the system. So it knows that like something like milk is going to be delivered a day beforehand or 2 days beforehand. And then it's all going to ship at the same time. And they'll be like the local place that ships it out. So you're getting services still, but less frequently because you live remotely, and whereas you're still, and then the odd emergency thing you might be able to also.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to start with, you would say, well, the odd emergency thing, you've already got that. You've already got, the UPS and FedEx, and you can use that for your one-offs. If you're just trying to get something like, at the same price point as the U.S. Postal Service or Canada Post, but in an area where it's like, well, this is massively unprofitable for us to offer it there. Yeah, you do groups where you're like, oh, okay. We drive out there, if it's like the far, far North Canada, maybe it's once a month. If it's like a small town, you're like, okay, there's enough traffic there to justify once a week. And then, if you're in Los Angeles, yeah, we can do same day. Like we have a stockpile of stuff and we have this, and it's like, yeah, and I think because the idea here is for it to be a corporation, but not a for-profit one, where then it's sort of managed by the members, and then it sort of becomes that best of both worlds, where it's hopefully fairly cheap because it's a bunch of people buying into the same service, but then it's not going to change, drastically every 4 years when different parties in power and they want to gut it or enforce it or whatever. Like, how about you don't worry about the postal service? The people and the organization will worry about that. And if it's not profitable, that's just up to the organization and their members. You don't worry about that. And then hopefully that gets past the, if it's a federal agency, you have to offer the same services to everyone. You're like, yeah, but we're not a federal agency. We're a corporation.
Yeah. In the U.S., I don't think we have a requirement that the federal has to offer the same services.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
We don't care about people in the U.S. Not right. We don't care about being equal. It's not a high priority. But yeah, I have been thinking about like what I've been tongue-in-cheek calling like an optional tax, like it's community goods that, and then finding some way to be, to where it's not cost prohibitive for anyone, because there are times that we just cannot get our government institutions to do what's right, and it'd be nice to have an alternative government.
Yeah, I mean, it would also be interesting in the U.S. like, if you could start that sort of a corporation where it's like groups buying together, like kind of trying to fulfill a need that in a lot of countries the government would do, but in this case saying no, we'll handle it, but not as a for-profit corporation, which is sort of like the worst of both worlds in a lot of cases. Going to the U.S. and doing something like health insurance.
Yeah. That's a big one I would love to do is health insurance and life insurance. And we do actually have a health insurance cooperative in the U.S. and I can't remember the name of it right now. And they're doing some really amazing things because if they can get, like cancer down to where people are getting, so they are focusing more on solving the problems rather than treating the symptoms,
Right.
because they have an actual financial incentive, while everyone else in the system is like, well, we don't need to cure them.
Right.
We
Yeah.
just need
In
to sell
fact,
them
if we can do the opposite
medication.
of that, then more
Right.
people will need treatment.
Right.
Which is interesting because we basically have a cooperative healthcare system in Canada, but not at all, right? Because we're still somehow focused on profit because it's run by the government, and they're like, oh, but then we get. I don't even know. I don't know because of course it makes more sense to have our citizenry be healthy so that they're not using those things, but it's not what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what would be interesting is if you like, I'm not even sure how you would do that in Canada. You would sort of need like other infrastructure first and a big thing, and you're like, hey, by the way, why don't we take on healthcare too? Because you guys are okay at it, but honestly, you could be a lot better. And then you take something in the US where a big part of the problem is the price tag. Is you're like, well, okay, we can group by, but if hip replacement is still 70 grand, what do we do? If you were to pair, be like, oh, okay, well, we actually work together with the Canadian government where we'll fly you there, or bus you there for $1,000. We pay them their price plus 20%, which ends up being, let's say, 10 grand. Well, that's a hell of a lot more affordable, same quality of care. And like, there's actually, what do they call it? Like pharmaceutical tourism, where actual health insurance companies in the US will, like, I think they pay to fly you to, I want to say San Jose, and then you take a bus across the border to Mexico, buy your meds for like a 10th or a 20th of the price, and then back across the border, and the actual insurance company pays for the flights and the busing and everything because it's cheaper.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for. It's also extremely complex system.
Yeah.
Like I have a doctor here that I can, and I've heard this in other countries. It's been for a while. You pay the doctor when you're well, and then you don't have to pay them when you're sick. So they have a direct incentive. Like, and if you're paying them all the time, which is kind of like an insurance company, you're paying them all the time whether you're visiting or not. Then
Right.
They have an incentive to keep you well. If they can get you in to do the preventative stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's,
which they could charge you more if you're not showing up for your annual, right? Yeah. But the problem is that they do not have any sort of insurance. So then I need to have some sort of insurance cover for catastrophic, right? So if I get cancer or something like that where I really do need it, that doctor's
right.
not going to be able to fulfill that. And if I get the catastrophic insurance, it comes with other stuff. So now I'm paying
right.
for all the stuff I'm not using, and so financially it just doesn't work out. So there needs to be an insurance company that says you don't get anything unless you have this dollar amount, and we'll cover it up to infinity. And there shouldn't be anything like some of the insurance companies like will cover up to like $1 million or $4 million a year. So it's like, why is there a limit on that?
Yeah.
You should be putting me in. And also they're like, oh, so a company gets lower costs because the risk is spread amongst all their employees. And I'm like, you should be spreading the risk among all of your customers.
Yeah.
So if I buy, why are you allowed to do that? And actually the insurance companies in the US, I believe, they all are insured by the government. So why is my risk not spread among the complete United States, right? Why? And then why is there not, some of these companies are international, why is it not, in effect, the risks should be distributed fully, right. But they're artificially creating these little things and making some people pay more.
They have more reason to not pay the oh, sorry, your company's hit the max, so we actually can't cover your costs. $3 million, please.
Right. Which my mom's cancer was $4 million, and the insurance company. Well, we got a bill for $2 million. So
yeah, I heard the story about that. There was somebody that had COVID and they were in the hospital for, I think it was like 90 days, and they ended up with like a $1.2 million, like 120-page hospital bill.
Yeah. So ours, they kept saying, well, the hospital did not put you in as needing a single room, but she had cancer, so she couldn't be exposed to anyone else's thing. And so you're in a single room when you're supposed to be in double, so the insurance company only paid for half the room. And I'm like, that was a clerical error. You can look at her thing and say that what she was diagnosed with needs her own room. You don't even need to go to the hospital and get them to change the code. Right. You should ethically change the code yourself.
Yeah. And there
We
should
finally
also
got
be
the
a system with the hospital. You're like,
identify
hey, you screwed up on the clerical stuff, so you take the hit.
Yeah,
Next
or at
time,
least some sort
do
of
it right.
fine or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because
I'll plug the Canadian healthcare for a second. I've had 2 brain surgeries and a month of radiation and 0 out-of-pocket expenses. In fact, the only thing is if you go to the hospital and you want a private room, you pay a little extra for that. And if all they have is a private room, you don't pay extra for that because and they charge you for TV per day. It's like, I'm sorry, that's no longer a thing. I've
yeah,
internet.
I'll take that bet any day.
Yeah. Which I mean, and that's really the crazy thing is just the per item price, the difference in price between Canada and the US. Like somebody from the US that comes here and has an issue, a bag of saline is I think like $20 or $30 in the hospital. I knew a Canadian that went down to the US and had a problem and had to go to the hospital. And a bag of saline was I think $2,000 or $1,200 or something. Like,
Yeah,
I'll do my own salt. I'll do it.
exactly.
yeah. And it turns out the measurements for saline are off anyways, and it's not the best thing for you. It's not bad, horrible for you. It's just not the right mixture.
Right.
But it's crazy when you look at some of the hospital, and then it'll change. At one hospital, it's $1,000. The other one, it's 20.
Yeah.
For no apparent reason.
Yeah.
And there's
And
no
they're-
visibility. And you ask the doctor, okay, so I want to get this procedure done. How much is it going to cost? He's like, I don't know. I don't even know how much your insurance. So it's like, how can you make a decision on care if you're not, realistically, you don't want cost to be an issue. If I need the surgery, I need the surgery. But, at some point, if my back's going to hurt once a month for a day, or, paying $1 million for surgery and all the follow-up that, by the way, only works 1 out of 4 times.
Yeah.
Someone should be taking that into. I would like to at least take that into account and say, I don't want to burden the rest of the people in the United States or the world with that surgery, going through all that stuff. It's just like I don't have enough information to make a wise decision. So.
Yeah, and there's weird stuff in the medical system.
Yeah. Did we just complain
Data
for a whole
information.
hour?
Yeah. I was going to say, this is our new TogetherTec format. We're just going to solve all the world's problems, but not actually. Like, we're just going to talk about the tech that's going to create it. Somebody needs to take this on, but we can possibly create the thing that just does that, right? It's like the Yelp for this, you know what I mean? Like, just the big MetaProject. Is there somebody doing them? Who's got the best one? And, like, could somebody work on this? Like, if you want a project to work on, great. Here you go.
Well, do we have I was just thinking, I meant to ask this earlier, do we have a funding model that we think would work for that community rating system? Do you think, it may be a small enough cost per user that maybe it's just donation. If you like seeing this exist, you do a monthly
I think in the
thing.
ideal world, it's its own network. So that's what pays for it, right? It's sort of like how Uber Eats takes, I think it's like 25%. It might take like 10%, right? Like, so you've got your network like for things like, the Uber Eats, for things like possibly Uber, for transportation, like the network itself ideally should have some model of like, it's actually helping do work, it's helping facilitate, and it takes a reasonable fee, not like all the other ones out there where they like 20-25% is the standard. You take a lot less, and I think that could easily fund a bunch of stuff. And it's just these companies only charge 25% because they can.
Yeah. So, but it'll take a certain network to get there. So, do we think in the short term just a pay what you can model would?
Wikipedia, donate. If it's just information that the customer's getting and we're not having drivers and it's paying the restaurant, like if it's not a percentage of your fee, if there's not no transactions going through the system, then pay per model, and you're paying with your data anyway, right? Like, if you're putting things into the system, there's a way to pay with that and to track, hopefully, and track that so that I can know I'm contributing and feel like I'm contributing. I don't feel the need to do that to Wikipedia because their for-profit side is doing just fine. So, and yet I love Wikipedia. Like, I love that it exists, but I don't donate to them.
Yeah. So I was just thinking maybe we need to start a crowdfund campaign for crowdfunding. At least I guess I need to just put up a survey and say, okay, who's going to give us
Yeah.
$5 a month, $2, or $10,
Yeah. I mean,
$40 a year.
my
whatever.
goal is to start out with Patreon because that's what's out there. But my end goal is to turn Conferati into that sort of Patreon type thing that I had planned before, where certain projects can say, hey, I'm in the same list of organizations as them, but I actually have my own account and I'm doing these cool things. Who wants to pay monthly for? It might just be to support and then possibly to have some access to some exclusive content. But the end goal would be for it to be something that wouldn't just be content based, because Patreon's kind of already doing that.
So do you want to go ahead and start doing weekly meetings to try and get this
we can, yeah. Actually, that might make sense, because initially the first couple of meetings might be about, hey, what should the prototype make sure it does? Right, because I've already got the wiki election one started, and then the goal is it's going to share the same back end.
Even just a landing page site, what does it say, and then how do we get people to sign up and ask them how much would you be willing to donate and how often, and how to describe it. And then you kind of need to know what the MVP features are to do that. But to have that discussion and say, okay, let's see if we can get some people to pay.
Yeah, if we have somebody that's good at that kind of messaging, I think that would be good. But that's the kind of thing I was trying with Wiki Election, and that's just not my strong suit. And that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to stop talking theory and saying like, hey, who wants to fund this? And then actually start to build it, and then say, who wants to fund this thing that you're looking at right now? That's sort of the pivot, and that's my. I don't know. Goal
I think
is
I can do that a little bit, and maybe if we get enough people in a room, I can facilitate that conversation. So maybe, so if you want to use that as the base for Conferati, then if you don't mind
that's
scheduling something. We just maybe not weekly, but just have a call or two and see if we can bang it out rather than taking up.
Yeah, and honestly,
although we could just do it as
probably enough to talk about to warrant doing it once a week. Like I think that's a huge topic. So sometimes it might be next step, sometimes it might be long term. But like that conversation, there's a lot there, and there's a lot of levels from the big organizations and tracking what they're doing, how much they pay in taxes, to who got a PPP loan, to who are the small projects and who's involved, and
Yeah, I think the system needs to be just generic. You can tag and rate any tag for any organization.
Exactly. Yeah, and the organizations will be broad. Like there will be huge multinational corporations. There will be political parties and lobbying groups, and then also like things that aren't even technically companies yet. Like like a project is going to be an organization. So Reason Score could have a page and be an organization,
or even this group.
Yeah.
Game B Facebook, Game B Projects Facebook rating 5-star.
Only 5-star.
Right, only 5-star.
The only one that's on the option.
How many 5-star reviews?
We don't even have the star system, but we hard coded this one to be 5 stars.
We'll just name it Game B Projects 5-star group.
I guess it's the Upgrading Society podcast would be down with having you guys on for that project and your similar project. And I don't think did I talk about it last week? Maybe not, because it was Mark's thing, so maybe I didn't. I don't think so. The Upgrading Society, I don't think they've released the podcast yet, because they did the one before me and they did me, and they didn't do the same thing with me that they did with the previous one. But they're having people on about their project and they're grading them. So that's why their thing's called Upgrading Society, which I love, on clarity of their message, that they're explaining what they're doing, the action that's taken towards it, how far are you on that goal, and the potential for the project. And they're going to have people on repeatedly, from what I understand, and also figure out how to kind of like interconnect them. Like they are the ones who were getting me in contact with the one I mentioned earlier that I put up. That isn't.
And Adriel, you own Conferati, right? The domain. .com.
Yeah.
And Jubilee, so could you put a link to that podcast?
No, because like I said, they haven't actually quite. It's called Upgrading Society, and they have their YouTube channel, which has like a couple people on it. I can put a link to that though.
Yeah.
Their YouTube channel. You won't be able to see. Let me just find it, and then we can stop going live, because I gotta.
Yeah, because maybe we should just start kicking this around a little more. And...
Yeah, I would. That was like with it was Mark that we talked to last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am on the list for when I actually like started to get some traction. And initially, I was going to wait until the project with Matoush had got to the point where Conferati had its own thing online. But I think it's fine to meet before then and sort of plan for what does it need to do, like out of the gates. What's, sort of what is the MVP, and then what's the line there from here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and actually, I kind of started that on that Google Doc, but we could review it in the meeting and see if I'm on the right track.
Yeah, and I think like I've got some, like I think we'll sort of each have our own plans for what that sort of an app could or should do, and yeah, we can start to talk about where that merges. And I think as you brought up, like in the early days, we don't need to worry too much about the funding model, but there's sort of like the initial funding, like when can we actually start to hopefully have it pay for itself as far as development, and then long term, what's the model?
So because their project isn't, I didn't mute myself, I was doing all that, didn't I? Well, because their project, they haven't released the podcast, like you can't, there's no content yet on their channel. They only have 7 subscribers, but they're affiliated with Future Thinkers.
Well, they have 8 subscribers now.
Awesome.
So
For the private chat too. I wish that this thing did have like that you could follow links from
the landing page or something.
Yeah, it's a cool system, and the 3 of them, they're kind of doing what they get to just sit around and chat about the person's idea. I'm like, isn't that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, that sounds like Ghibli's dream job.
I like the like what you said that they do, where they go back and revisit the same project multiple times. I do like that part.
Like
That's something that I sort of feel like that the solution raising, project raising, that whole thing to go through. Because it would be interesting to see how project evolves, but then it also hopefully helps push that project a bit and be like, hey, you just had your session, come back in a month or 2 and we'll talk about where you are. If you know that that's happening, at least for me, that's the kind of thing that gives me some incentive to be like, oh, I don't want to embarrass myself in a month or 2. I'm gonna work on this.
I'm all about embarrassing myself. But yeah, no, it's nice to know that you have the connection in the community. And yes, I think they are excited about solution rating. I was there for Game B, and they actually didn't give me any of the ratings. I think because it was like explaining Game B, but I did get a little plug for TogetherTec and solution rating in there. I was like, oh, should I be a Drill and Bentley on? I don't know if I gave your names, but the TogetherTec people for the sense-making projects. And I think the 3rd podcast they're doing is on a sense-making project.
Cool.
So that's cool.
Keep an eye on that.
I also love, I couldn't remember the name of it, but I'm like, up-leveling? I'm like, oh no, it's upgrading because they're grading it. What a great name.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, we should probably end the broadcast. We're already 10 minutes over, as we do. I love how